Hello everyone, welcome back to Secret Things. Today, we will share the truth about climate change, why it's our responsibility to act now. Climate change is not a distant threat that we can afford to ignore anymore. Every day, the planet is getting warmer, and the effects of climate change are already impacting millions of people around the world. But there is still hope. We can take action to address this global issue by understanding the facts. The effects of climate change are devastating. From natural disasters to rising sea levels, to displaced communities and struggling wildlife. It's not just about saving the planet, it's about saving lives. But there is a way forward. Innovations in renewable energy are giving us the tools to build a sustainable future. And all around the world, people are taking action, raising their voices and demanding change.
The popular idea of cutting our emissions in half in 10 years only gives us a 50% chance of staying below 1.5 degrees and the risk of setting off irreversible chain reactions beyond human control. 50% may be acceptable to you, but those numbers do not include tipping points, most feedback loops, additional warming hidden by toxic air pollution, or the aspects of equity and climate justice. They also rely on my generation sucking hundreds of billions of tons of your CO2 out of the air with technologies that barely exist. So a 50% risk is simply not acceptable to us, we who have to live with the consequences. How dare you pretend that this can be solved with just business as usual and some technical solutions?
We can't afford to wait any longer. The time to act is now. We need to take bold steps to reduce our carbon emissions, protect our natural resources, and make our planet a safer and healthier place for all living beings. The beauty of the natural world is at stake, and it's up to us to protect it. So let's take action and learn the truth we need to know about climate change. Together, we can create a brighter future for ourselves and for generations to come. Let's get started. 1. The devastating truth, how our actions are destroying the planet and the urgent need to save it. Human activity, particularly the release of greenhouse gases, is the primary cause of climate change. These gases, like carbon dioxide, contribute to rising temperatures, which have been steadily increasing due to the burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas. In the past, our atmosphere had around 280 parts per million of carbon dioxide, which allowed for the development of human civilization and life on Earth. However, as fossil fuel usage has increased, so has the amount of carbon in the atmosphere, with current levels well over 415 parts per million. The rise in demand for animal-based agriculture in wealthy countries has also led to an increase in other greenhouse gases, like methane and nitrous oxide, which contribute to around 15% of global emissions. But the biggest culprit of climate change is the use of fossil fuels, which accounts for about 70% of annual emissions from fossil fuel consumption and other industrial processes. Carbon dioxide, in particular, remains active in the atmosphere for a much longer period than other greenhouse gases. Companies that produce fossil fuels are releasing millions of years' worth of carbon into the atmosphere, which has led to concentrations of carbon dioxide exceeding 415 parts per million in 2019. It is the first time in over 2.5 million years. To combat climate change, the most important step we can take is to keep fossil fuels in the ground. 2. Our atmosphere contains more carbon dioxide than at any other moment in human history. To put it simply, the amount of carbon dioxide in the air is increasing at an alarming rate. The Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii has been measuring the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere since the 1950s, and in February and March 2021, the sensors there detected concentrations of over 417 parts per million. To put this in perspective, pre-industrial levels were at 278 ppm, which means that we are already halfway to doubling the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere compared to the period between 1750 and 1800. This graph shows the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere at Mauna Loa for the past 5 years in the first graph, and the full record of data from both scripts and NOAA in the second graph. The monthly mean values for CO2 are shown in red and black lines and symbols, with the black lines corrected for the average seasonal cycle. To determine the seasonal cycle, the average of 7 adjacent cycles is taken, except for the first and last 3.5 years of the record, where the seasonal cycle is averaged over the first and last 7 years, respectively. The uncertainty of each monthly mean is shown by the vertical bars on the black lines in the first graph, which take into account the observed variability of CO2 in different weather systems as they pass over Mauna Loa. Daily means are averaged to obtain the monthly means, but only for hours when background conditions prevail. If a month is missing, its interpolated value is shown in blue. Carbon dioxide levels go up and down depending on the seasons, but the annual carbon dioxide concentration for 2021 is expected to be around 416.3 ppm, even with a slight reduction in emissions in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere hasn't been seen for more than 3 million years, when sea levels were several meters higher, and there were trees growing at the South Pole. 3. Extreme weather, the increasing threat of climate change on our planet. As the years go by, we're seeing more and more evidence of the damaging effects of human-caused climate change. The number of extreme weather events, from scorching heat waves to torrential rainfalls, is skyrocketing at an alarming rate. According to the Climate Science Special Report, the number of high-temperature events is increasing while low-temperature events are decreasing. More than 200 studies analyzed by Carbon Brief found that 68% of extreme weather events studied in the past 20 years were made worse by human-caused climate change. In the UK, summer 2021 saw up to a 54% increase in rainfall compared to the long-term average, and 2020 was the fifth wettest year in the UK since 1862. It's not just rain that's becoming more extreme, as heat waves are also on the rise. The Lancet warns that in the past 20 years, there has been a 53.7% increase in heat-related mortality in people over 65, and this number will continue to increase as the heat worsens. And it's not just the UK, as extreme heat has affected countries across the globe, with 2020 seeing record temperatures in a long list of countries. The situation is only getting worse, with many countries experiencing even higher temperatures in 2021 and 2022, and projections suggesting that 2023 will be another record-breaking year of heat. The effects of these extreme weather events are devastating. Wildfires are raging for longer and spreading farther than ever before, with millions of acres of land devastated. At least 155 million people were pushed into acute food insecurity in 2020 due to extreme weather, conflict, and economic shocks. It's clear that we need to take action now to reduce our carbon footprint and limit the severity of climate change before it's too late. 4. The world is heating up fast and we're running out of time. The world is heating up, and it's happening fast. In 2015, world leaders set a goal to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius, but a recent report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, warns that it will be incredibly difficult to achieve this goal unless we take drastic action to reduce emissions. The report models 5 different future emission scenarios, ranging from very high to very low emissions, and in each scenario, global temperatures are expected to reach at least 1.5 degrees Celsius. Unfortunately, of all the scenarios considered, only the very low emission scenario projects that the world will see less than 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming by the end of this century. This means that we need to drastically cut our emissions immediately, and even then, we will likely overshoot the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold by 2041 to 2060 before temperatures finally begin to decrease by the end of the century. Based on current emissions, the world is on track to warm by 2.7 degrees Celsius to 3.1 degrees Celsius by the year 2100. According to the IPCC's latest report, the last decade was likely the hottest period in the past 125,000 years, and the years from 2016 to 2020 were the hottest 5-year period recorded since at least 1850. The estimated temperature during the warmest multi-century period in the last 100,000 years is shown on the left side of the graph, which occurred around 6,500 years ago during the Holocene epoch. Only a period around 125,000 years ago, before the last ice age, might have had higher temperatures than we are currently experiencing. These past warm periods were caused by natural orbital variations that aren't in play today, so we know that the warming we're seeing is primarily due to human activities. 5. The ocean absorbs the majority of the heat we generate. Let's start with warming temperatures and how they are affecting the ocean. Since 1969, the top 100 meters of the ocean has warmed more than 0.6 degrees Fahrenheit, and the ocean has absorbed about 90% of the heat generated by rising emissions. As a result, sea levels have risen by about 8 inches or 20 centimeters in the past century, and the rate of increase over the past 2 decades is almost double that of the past century and seems to be accelerating every year. In fact, the global mean sea level reached a new record high in 2021, rising by an average of 4.5 millimeters per year from 2013 to 2021. According to a 2019 study, the oceans absorbed 90% of the heat gained by the Earth between 1971 and 2010. Another study discovered that it absorbed 20 sextillion joules of heat in 2020, which is the equivalent of 2 Hiroshima bombs each second. Because the ocean has enormous volume and heat storage capacity, some creatures are accustomed to relatively steady temperatures. Coral reefs are very susceptible to climate changes, which is why many are dying off. Since the start of the Industrial Revolution, ocean acidity has increased by around 30%, and the oceans have absorbed between 20% and 30% of the total carbon dioxide emissions generated by humans each year. This absorption is causing coral reefs to decline rapidly, with projections suggesting that they will decline to only 10 to 30% of their former coverage at 1.5 degrees Celsius warming, and to less than 1% at 2 degrees Celsius warming. The Great Barrier Reef in Australia has already lost half of its corals since the 1990s due to sustained rising ocean temperatures that have bleached them white and made them inhospitable to colonizing organisms, according to the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Thank you for joining us today on Secret Things. We hope you now understand the severity of climate change and why we need to take action to stop it. We must remember that it's not just about the planet, but it's about the lives of all living beings that are being affected. We are already witnessing the devastating effects of climate change, from natural disasters to rising sea levels, to displaced communities and struggling wildlife. But we can still turn things around. We can take bold steps to reduce our carbon emissions, protect our natural resources, and make our planet a safer and healthier place. So let's join hands and work together to create a brighter future for ourselves and for generations to come. Remember, every small action can make a difference, and the time to act is now. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.